Rainstorm drizzle clung to the crooked gutters of Greybriar Alley, turning the cobblestones into something that looked suspiciously like stew. It was the perfect weather, thought Casimir de Lune, for a soft launch. Not the kind with champagne flutes and ribbon cutting. He would die of embarrassment before the sun could finish him off, but a quiet unveiling. Just a brass bell on the door and a sign that read, with understated elegance, "Second-hand souls, a night-only bookshop." Casimir was, technically speaking, undead royalty. He was also hopelessly introverted, which practically made him a double ghost, while other vampires cavorted in velvet opera boxes or curated Instagram accounts dedicated to blood orange cocktails. Casimir preferred to alphabetize 19th century travelogues and mutter to himself about misplaced semicolons. Opening a bookshop seemed the natural next step for a man who had spent the last 2 centuries reading footnotes for fun. He had everything ready. Antique lamps fitted with moon-filtered bulbs, a register that still rang like a Lutheran church bell, and custom bookmarks that read, "Please turn me over." Casimir's idea of a saucy joke. He even had a small reading nook furnished with a single overstuffed chair, plush crimson of course, but angled so that no one could sit facing him directly. Eye contact was, in Casimir's opinion, the 8th deadly sin. At precisely 8:01 p.m., he flipped the brass sign from closed to open. He dabbed a hint of clove oil on his wrists to scent the air. Clove reminded him of cathedrals and other places he would rather avoid, and opened the door just wide enough to invite curiosity, but discourage loiterers. Then he waited. The bell jingled once, almost timidly, and in waddled an elderly woman in a knitted shawl the color of turnips. Her eyes gleamed with purpose. Casimir summoned the tiniest smile his lips could manage without cracking. "Good evening, madam. May I help you find a particular volume?" She leaned in, sniffed twice. It was in hindsight a rather suspicious series of sniffs, and whispered, "I need recipes." Casimir brightened. "We specialize in out-of-print cookbooks, actually. May I point you toward—" "Garlic!" she hissed with surprising vigor, pressing her liver-spotted hand flat against the counter. "My grandson says it's heart-healthy, and my bridge club meets Friday." Casimir's face lost what little color a vampire's face can lose. Garlic. Inside his store. He felt as if the word itself had peeled paint off the spines of his beloved first editions. I beg your pardon, but we're more of a literary establishment." He tried an apologetic bow. "Perhaps the grocer." The woman's expression soured like old milk. "Useless," she muttered, and clomped out, leaving a faint aroma of mothballs and crushed dreams. Casimir closed the door behind her, slid the lock for good measure, and chalked the incident up to a cosmic misunderstanding. One mistaken shopper did not a trend make. At 8:29 p.m., the bell jingled again. A tall fellow with a waxed mustache sauntered in, carrying something that looked alarmingly like a mortar and pestle. "Good evening," Casimir began, voice barely louder than a bookmark turning. "Evening. I'm in search of a text." Casimir's shoulders relaxed. Finally, a real bibliophile. "We have several texts. Fiction. Poetry." The man twirled his mustache. "A treatise on garlic preservation. Something authoritative." Casimir said nothing for a full 2 seconds, which in vampire time is an hour of existential crisis. I don't stock that sort of volume." The man frowned, adjusted his monocle, which Casimir suspected was purely decorative, and marched out, leaving a slick of frustration behind him. At 9:07 p.m., 3 college students lurched in, wearing matching T-shirts that read, "Garlic! It's clove at first sight!" They carried a Bluetooth speaker blasting pop music, thick with auto-tuned heartbreak. "Yo! My dude!" said the ringleader, a girl with neon eyebrows. "Tell me you've got that new anthology, 50 Shades of Aioli." Casimir's voice failed him entirely. The students left after taking selfies in front of a signed copy of Interview with the Vampire, which they had never heard of but liked for the retro vibes. From 9:15 to 11:45 p.m., the pattern persisted. A chef in checkered pants wanted garlic foraged only by monks. A conspiracy theorist sought the sacred bulb that will awaken humanity. Even the postman popped by after his route to ask how to infuse garlic into cupcakes. By midnight, Casimir leaned against a stack of dusty folios, contemplating on life choices. It occurred to him that perhaps the sign was too subtle. Perhaps he should have hung a banner screaming, "Absolutely no garlic!" But that might attract precisely the sort of people who enjoy defying instructions. And frankly, Casimir had neither the social stamina nor the fire insurance for that. He decided to close early, citing an acute bout of ennui. As he extinguished the lamps, he could still smell phantom garlic clinging to the lamplight like an aftertaste of humiliation. Night 2. Casimir installed a small card beneath the main sign. "We sell books, not bulbs." He felt clever. Unfortunately, the universe felt cleverer. At 8:03 p.m., a stout woman wearing a chef's toque marched up and squinted at the card through her bifocals. "Ah, perfect," she squealed. "Books about bulbs." Before Casimir could protest, she barreled inside. "I'm hosting a garlic gala for the International Society of Nighttime Gourmands. We need autographed copies of classic garlic Bibles." Casimir inhaled, exhaled, and inhaled again because breathing was optional at this point. "Madam, we do not sell cookbooks dedicated to Allium sativum. Might I interest you in Bram Stoker's lesser-known novel, The Snake's Pass?" She recoiled. "What part of roasted, crushed, or confit do you not understand?" "The all." She stormed out, promising a scathing Yelp review. Casimir slumped into the crimson chair, which groaned in sympathy. His peaceful night-only refuge had become garlic ground zero. Was this karmic retribution for the time he'd misfiled Dante under comedy? At 10:16 p.m., two men in trench coats and sunglasses trudged in, each clutching a spiral notebook. "Agent Powell," said one, flashing a badge that simply read, "Food Blogger." "This is Agent Singh. We're compiling field intel for our article. 50 places to get your garlic fix after dark. You got tips?" Casimir stared, torn between horror and the bleak amusement that comes from total defeat. "I'm beginning to suspect I'm part of some elaborate prank." "Prank?" Powell adjusted his collar. "Sir, the world is built on garlic. It's the axis of gastronomy, the bedrock of flavor, the—" Singh leaned in conspiratorially. "Look, friend, we'll pay handsomely if you can point us toward the clandestine garlic speakeasy, rumored to operate somewhere on this street." Casimir considered telling them to try the Baptist church down the block, just for sport, but he lacked the petty energy. He merely shook his head. They left, unconvinced, scribbling notes. After they'd gone, he whispered to the empty shop, "Why can't anyone just want a good Gothic novel?" The silence answered with a shrug. By dawn, Casimir had filed exactly 3 sales, none of them for garlic literature. He sold a tattered guide to moth collecting, a pocket atlas of fictional islands, and a misprinted dictionary missing every word beginning with G. He tried not to reflect on the symbolism. Night 3 arrived like a cat that knows you're allergic but sits on your lap anyway. Casimir considered closing permanently. Then he remembered his lease, written on parchment and notarized by a warlock, which promised dire consequences for early termination. He would persevere. He drafted a longer disclaimer. "While we applaud your culinary curiosity, we do not, have not, will not, shall not, and cannot provide garlic recipes. garlic histories, or self-help books for cloves with low self-esteem. Please adjust expectations accordingly. He tacked it to the door, took a steadying sip of AB neg from his discreet hip flask, and opened for business. Things were quiet for 15 whole minutes. Casimir allowed himself a rare smile. Then the bell rang, and in shuffled an ancient man whose beard alone qualified for its own pension. He glanced at the disclaimer. "Wise words," he rasped. Casimir's spine unknotted until the old man added, "But I am not here for garlic. I'm here because garlic ruined my life." Casimir arched one eyebrow. "Vampires are naturally arch. It saves time." The man launched into his tale. He had been a vampire hunter in the 1970s, popular enough to warrant trading cards. His secret weapon? Garlic cologne. One day he slipped on a clove, threw out his back, and spent the next 40 years bitterly reading romance novels in bed. "I want a book," he said, voice quaking like bad jello, "that will help me forgive garlic." Casimir was touched, despite himself. "Forgiveness is a tall order, sir, but perhaps you'll find solace in the Count of Monte Cristo. If anyone knows about revenge and letting go, it's Dumas." The old hunter accepted the leather-bound volume, patted Casimir's hand, and paid in exact change, plus a coupon for dental floss. He left without mentioning garlic again. For the first time all week, Casimir felt almost understood. His optimism lasted until 11:02 p.m., when a tour bus braked outside. A guide with a megaphone hollered, "And here we have London's famous garlic underground, rumored to stock every secret recipe from Minsk to Manila." The doors of the bus hinged open like the jaws of an ancient beast, and 30 tourists poured out, each wearing t-shirts depicting a vampire crying over a garlic braid. Casimir backed up until his shoulders hit the reference section. The waves surged in, cameras flashing. Someone knocked over a stack of literary biographies. Another tried to trade him a head of elephant garlic for store credit. The aroma alone singed his nose hairs. Panicked, he flapped his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, there's been a grievous achoo!" A sneeze rocketed out, cracking the chandelier bulb with precision artillery. The shop plunged into semi-darkness, lit only by the glow of a smartphone screens. "Spooky ambiance," cheered a tourist. "Do you do tasting flights?" "Tasting?" Casimir squeaked. "This is not a wine bar." "But your Yelp listing says, rich notes, full body." Someone protested. Casimir vowed to hunt down the toque-wearing chef and stake her Yelp account through the heart. He slammed the cash drawer, leapt onto a rolling ladder, and gave it a shove. The ladder coasted past the humor section while he shouted, "This is a bibliophilic sanctuary, not a bull bazaar!" The tourists clapped, assuming it was immersive theater. One handed him a peeled garlic clove like a stage prop. Casimir squealed, lost his grip, and tumbled into a hammock of hanging plants he'd installed for feng shui. Soil and philodendron leaves everywhere. "Encore!" came a voice. Enough was enough. Casimir activated the emergency measure he had prepared, precisely for occasions involving crowds, daylight breaches, or unexpected mariachi bands. He cut the power entirely. The shop fell pitch black. Human visitors, unlike vampires, lacked convenient night vision. Within seconds, tourists shrieked, fumbled, and eventually stampeded toward the exit, colliding with each other like confused bowling pins. When they'd gone, Casimir restored the lights, surveyed the wreckage, and realized half his inventory lay on the floor. A first edition of Milton had been used as a coaster for iced coffee. Mocking laughter bubbled up his throat, followed by genuine tears. He locked the door, flipped the sign to nope, and retreated to the chair. As dawn threatened the horizon, He contemplated booking himself into a centuries-long coma. Night 4 began with Casimir drafting an open letter to the neighborhood. Dear residents, no more garlic talk, or I will personally haunt your Goodreads recommendations. Halfway through, he had a revelation. Perhaps the path of resistance was the problem. What if he surrendered? What if he embraced the madness? The notion tasted like sacrilege soaked in citrus, yet its audacity thrilled him. He rummaged through a stack of blank notebooks, selected one with marbled covers, entitled the first page, The Nocturnal Gourmand's Guide to Garlic, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bulb, from a respectful distance. He did not intend to write an actual cookbook, obviously. Handling raw garlic would be like sunbathing on a steak, but he could write about garlic, its history, its folklore, its cameo in vampire myths, biased sources, obviously. He could throw in wholly invented recipes with instructions like Step 1, wear gloves. Step 2, don't invite me to dinner. He would cloak satire and sincerity, sell copies, and funnel the proceeds into air filtration units. Was that dishonest? Possibly. Was it genius? Absolutely. He spent the next 2 nights writing faster than a Victorian serial novelist on deadline. He described garlic ice cream that required milking ghost cows, garlic tea steeped during eclipses, and garlic bread best served to ex-boyfriends. For good measure, he included a section called Emergency Garlic Substitutes for Accident-Prone Vampires, featuring cloves carved out of parsnips, marble, or existential dread. By night 7, he had the manuscript bound and stacked by the register. A hand-lettered card announced, "New release. Signed copies available. No garlic smell included." At 8:07 p.m., sharp, the door creaked open. It was the toque-wearing chef, Yelp's harbinger of doom. Casimir's fangs itched, but he, a picture of composure, gestured to the stack. "Madam, may I interest you in the definitive guide?" She sniffed. "Does it have gluten-free options?" "Indubitably. Also ghost-free, curse-free, and mildly radioactive-free." She flipped through, paused at a chapter titled Confiding Garlicky Grievances, and giggled. This is satire." "Satire sells," Casimir replied, praying she wouldn't test him on flavor profiles. She bought 4 copies for her culinary book club. Casimir autographed each. "Keep it clovey, stay groovy." She left with a smile, and without any real garlic crossing the threshold. Success. Word spread faster than fungal rot in forgotten produce bins. Foodies flocked to secondhand souls, clamoring for the cheeky book. Bloggers praised its postmodern panache and groundbreaking refusal to list actual ingredients. A critic called it the Dadaist garlic manifesto we didn't know we needed. Casimir watched receipts multiply like rabbits. More importantly, customers now entered expecting humor, not bulbs. They bought poetry while they waited in line. They asked for book recommendations that had nothing to do with charcuterie. One even inquired about Balkan folklore, something Casimir could discuss for hours. Inevitably, trouble sniffed around again. Agent Powell and Agent Singh returned, brandishing his book. "Explain." Powell barked. "These recipes don't exist." Casimir steepled his fingers. "Sir, they exist in the imagination, which is arguably the most important organ in any kitchen." Singh chuckled. Powell tried to stay stern, failed, and bought 3 more copies for research. The elderly vampire hunter reappeared, leaning on a cane shaped like a crucifix, ironically painted pink. He reported that the book had helped him make peace with garlic's absence in his life. He now planned to open a pop-up restaurant, serving nothing but decorative parsley. Casimir wished him luck. Eventually, even the tourists returned, but this time they respected the property, whispering like pilgrims in a shrine. They snapped photos beside a display. Warning: contains 0 garlic. A small tip jar read, "Buy Casimir earplugs." It overflowed nightly. One chilly dawn, Casimir tallied profits while sipping synthetic B positive. He realized he hadn't cowered behind a shelf in days. Customers chatted, laughed, and left him to his cataloging. He'd achieved the impossible. A social buffer made from satire, commerce, and mild deception. Yet a sliver of guilt pricked him. Might he be denying the world genuine garlic knowledge? Surely there were souls sincerely baffled by bulb etiquette. Could he, introverted though he was, provide a bridge? He decided to commission a real cookbook, written by professionals, tested by humans, and stock it in a special quarantined culinary corner, sealed in plastic to protect his sinuses. He would warn patrons loudly, but from behind the register. Handle at your own aromatic risk. It felt like a reasonable compromise. The inaugural shipment arrived on night 14. Casimir donned tongs and gently shelved the books. Almost immediately, customers snapped them up. Some sought culinary enlightenment. Others bought both volumes for compare and contrast hilarity. Everyone left satisfied. Business boomed. Casimir hired an assistant, an earnest goth student named Petunia, who was allergic to 15 different things, garlic included. She handled daytime deliveries while he slept, and practiced a perfect glare to deter early birds. The landlord popped by to congratulate him, and raised the rent only modestly, which in landlord terms was a hug. Casimir considered biting him, then remembered how paperwork complicated property transfers. He settled for a polite nod. Months rolled on. Secondhand Souls became a local landmark, featured in magazines with pun-heavy headlines like "Fangs for the Memories and Bulb Fiction." Casimir gave exactly one interview, conducted entirely via handwritten notes, slid under a door, ensuring 0 eye contact. The reporter called it the most refreshingly cryptic conversation of my career. On the anniversary of opening night, Petunia organized a celebration. She strung fairy lights, shaped like tiny books, brewed mulled wine, scented with star anise, garlic-free, obviously, and ordered a cake frosted to resemble an open novel. The first page read, "To Casimir, who turned a nightmare into a niche market." The second page simply said, "P.S. No garlic." Dozens arrived. Tourists, chefs, bloggers, the ex-vampire hunter, even Powell and Singh, now writing a guide called The Flavor of Fiction. They mingled, browsed, bought armloads of reading material. At midnight, Petunia clinked her glass and asked the crowd to applaud, the most reluctant entrepreneur this side of the grave. Casimir emerged from behind a stack of encyclopedias. Cheeks faintly pink from secondhand attention, he cleared his throat. "Thank you for supporting literature," he began, voice barely louder than a butterfly sneeze, "and for keeping your culinary curiosities properly quarantined." Polite laughter. "I am grateful." It was the longest speech he'd given since 1738, when he'd toasted Voltaire at a masquerade ball and promptly fainted from anxiety. By comparison, tonight was a resounding triumph. As the party wound down, Casimir lingered by the door, bidding guests farewell with a nod. The final visitor was the elderly woman with the turnip shawl, the very first customer who'd asked for garlic recipes months ago. She held both books, satirical and serious, plus a slim novel about introversion. "I came to apologize," she said softly. "I misjudged your shop." Casimir bowed. "Madam, without your persistence, I might never have found my niche." She patted his arm. "Well, consider this interest." She pressed a small jar into his hand. Garlic-infused olive oil, sealed tight, wrapped in 3 layers of wax paper. "For emergencies," she whispered, winking. Casimir accepted it like a live grenade. As she left, he slid the jar onto a high shelf labeled Do not open until sunrise doesn't kill me. It gleamed in the lamplight, a reminder that even nightmares could become collectibles. When the alley finally emptied, Casimir turned the sign to closed and sighed, not weary, but content. He walked the aisles, straightening books, whispering goodnight to their spines. In the reading nook, he settled into the crimson chair with a fresh manuscript, working title, Introversion for Extroverted Vegetables. He chuckled at his own absurdity. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft as punctuation. Inside, the lamps glowed, the pages rustled, and somewhere high on a shelf, a jar of garlic oil kept silent vigil, proof that even a shy vampire could learn to coexist with the most offensive of aromatics, provided there were enough books, enough humor, and a firmly worded disclaimer.